Bonjour, everyone, and bienvenue à les Jeux Olympiques du Monde. Je m'appelle Rebecca. I'm going to be your host for today. I hope that everyone is doing amazingly out there. I know that this is a Saturday, so if you're watching this, I'm kind of questioning your life choices at this point. I'm just kidding. So, welcome to day 2 of the Sales Olympics. We are going to be diving into a really meaty topic today. So we had opening ceremonies last night. It was absolutely pouring rain all over everyone. Don't believe the TVs. I was like, I am water at one point, but it was very, very, very stunning, beautiful, great opening ceremonies. Lady Gaga killed it. Celine Dion killed it. It was incredible experience. And I even got a picture of the balloon that lifted into air. So I hope everyone got the chance to watch that. So I'm Becc. For everyone that I haven't met on the line, the only rule is the more engagement, the better. So if you are out there, if you'd give a shout out, I see Lori Richardson coming in here. Hi, Lori. See Ibrahim out there. So if you are out there in LinkedIn land watching this, if you would come into the chat, introduce yourself, say your name, the company that you work at, your role, and one thing you want to learn when it comes to sales. But welcome everyone to day 2 of the Sales Olympics. So we're going to dive in here. Today's topic is going to be how to find the problem that your buyer wants to solve. So we're going to go ahead with lap 1, but these are 400-second laps apiece, and we're going to go ahead and dive into lap 1 of how to find the problem that you solve for your buyer. So lap 1 is around lagging indicators. So lagging indicators for your buyer persona, and these are always going to be based on your buyer persona, what they're metriced on. You have 3 types of metrics essentially when it comes down to indicators. So you have indicators, which are just a sign of something. You have performance indicators, which are a sign of something performance related. How did something net out? It's a result that you can't buy essentially or change directly. And then you have key performance indicators, which are for your buyer persona. What are the metrics that they are finally hired and fired to drive and focus on? So a great example of this is if I'm the marketing director, if the AC goes out within the building and everyone has to be sent home, my butt's not on the line as the marketing director. That's going to be, somewhere around the maintenance director, let's say, for the building. So key performance indicators for the maintenance director is going to be, is the building up to temperature? So a lagging indicator is the final metric of the 3 types of indicators that your buyer is hired and fired to drive. So this is the main result that they're looking after when it comes to their entire role. And a good hint on these is if you just take the end of their title, if it's director of marketing, let's say, it's an overt indicator on are they a good or bad marketer? So for a sales leader, it's going to be, are you a good or bad seller? So let me see if anyone can jump into the chat. I see Mike up in here. Hi, Mike. Hi, Aaron. So I want to see if y'all can guess for a sales rep, what is the main lagging indicator? What is the final metric that they are hired and fired to drive that answers the question, are they a good or bad seller? So the key of this indicator, let me see if people can jump in the chat and answer that. So the question on deck is, for a seller, what's the main lagging indicator? So the great news about lagging indicators is there's typically only 1 to 3. So I'd say usually one that's a central, like North Star, if you will, of how someone's measuring their performance. And then maybe there's two at max that are auxiliary KPIs that basically, so Aaron already got it. Closing deal, Justin got it, Kirsten got it, y'all nailed it. So it's closed won ARR or closed won quota. So the main metric that measures, are they a good or bad seller? The main lagging indicator that measures, are they a good or bad seller, is going to be, did they hit their quota in terms of closed won? So let's do another one. Y'all can go into the chat. Let's go SDR, for instance. So a seller, it was closed won. What is the lagging indicator for an SDR? How are they measured? What are they hired and fired to drive, promoted and demoted to drive? So I'm going to rattle off a couple while you go into the chat for an SDR. And there's always a quantitative metric that's answering the qualitative question. There's a quantitative lagging indicator that answers the qualitative question of, are they a good or bad blank at their role? So a great example would be marketing is going to be MQL. Customer success, Peter nailed it. For SDRs, it's meetings booked. So you'll notice that for sales and sales development, they're actually two different lagging indicators because they're two different roles. So sellers, it's going to be closed won. SDR, it's going to be booked meetings. Marketers, it's going to be an MQL for demand generation marketer, for instance. HR, it's going to be employee churn. Customer success, it's going to be renewal, or in some off cases, it's going to be cross-sell or upsell. So you'll notice that there's one main metric, and then there's usually a couple ones that they're on the offshoot, sometimes metric on a little bit, but there's usually one focal point. So I want to go sports for a second because today is day one of the Olympics. So let's say for football, foot, or soccer, for all the Americans watching, what is the lagging indicator for a soccer game or a football game? What is the main metric that a coach or that a coach of a soccer team is hired and fired to drive? Are they a good or bad team? Which team is better than the other one? So, for track and field, let's say, it is the time that it takes to cross the finish line. So for the mile time, for instance, if it's going to be that length of time, it's how fast did they finish that mile? That's their final metric that they're hired and fired to drive. So we've got a number of them coming in here. Justin nailed it. So number of goals scored. So I win or lose according to that. I'm a good or bad football team, or I'm a good or bad track athlete, good or bad runner. For a runner, it's going to be according to the amount of time it took them to cross the finish line. For a soccer team, it's going to be the amount of goals that they scored and did they win. For a basketball team, it's going to be the same thing, the amount of points that they scored and did they win. For a American football team, it's going to be the amount of points that they scored and did they win. But you'll notice for each of those sports, for football, for American football, and for basketball, they're based on score, but how you score a point is different. So I want you to imagine for a second that I was a football player, global football player, and I am sitting there on the field and there is a basketball goal outside, out of bounds. And someone passes me the soccer ball and I pick it up with my hands and I shoot it out of bounds, but I make it in the basketball goal. I want y'all to give me one more engagement in the chat. Would that be a good or bad thing? So I'm playing soccer. Someone passes me the soccer ball with their foot, and then I pick it up and I throw it and I make the basketball outside of bounds. So you'll notice these are two different sports. So how you score points is completely different. So that would be a handball in soccer, and it wouldn't be a point for the win. So my main push here is to find the different buyer persona lagging indicators of what matters to them and what are they measured on, if they're good, bad, or effective or ineffective blank. Yes! That's one of my metrics. Here's one of my metrics. So that is lap one of how to find your problem. So the first thing is according to the lagging indicator metric. Everyone is going to be measuring and viewing a problem in terms of what obstructs them from getting their lagging indicator. So let's go into lap two right away. I'm trying to promise to be on time here. So the second metric that people are looking at is what's called a leaning indicator. So a leaning indicator is also known as a coincidental indicator. And it essentially is a metric. It's the only tricky one, but it is a performance-related metric that is not the final one that they're hired or fired to drive, but just helps them know, are they on the right or wrong path? So they use these indicators during the game. Lagging indicator is measured after the game on if they're successful, after it ends. A leaning indicator is measured during the game. And people use it to predict whether they're going to hit their final lagging indicator If not, they use it to diagnose which leading indicator they need to change. And once they've changed that leading indicator, they look back to the leading indicator to say, have I changed the right one, the right leading indicator? Have I changed it in the right way? Have I changed it enough? And if I changed it in a way that I now believe, based on the change, that I'm going to hit that lagging indicator goal. So I'll give you an example. Well, let's see if people can guess this one. So lagging indicator for SDRs is booked meetings, for instance. So can anyone jump in the chat and name a non-final metric for an SDR that's a performance metric? So it's not the booked meeting. Can anyone else name a performance-related metric that SDRs look to during the process of when they're reaching out to see if they're doing the right or wrong behavior? Do they need to change their behavior? So people are usually obsessed with these metrics on LinkedIn. They'll say, I got an increased blank, or this template gets an increased blank. Let's see if anyone can guess them. So SDR, what's the non-final? So SDR only, the lagging indicator goal is booked meetings. So what's a performance-related metric that's not the final metric of booked meetings, but helps the SDR know if they have a good or bad email, or if they have a good or bad email? Is the text good? Is the subject line good? So we're getting warmer here. Here we go. Justin nailed it. Everyone give it up for Justin in the chat. Reply rate. That is a great example of a leading indicator. So reps will see it during when they're prospecting, during the game, so to speak. And they'll say, my reply rate is only, let's say, 5%. So with a 5% reply rate, I'm assuming that I'm not going to hit my lagging indicator goal of I have to book 10 meetings. Or let's do marketing for an example, or let's stay on SDR for a second. Another one is open rate. They'll say I have a 20% open rate. So I believe that I'm not going to hit my booked meetings goal based on this open rate. Now, no one's hired or fired to drive a great open rate. If you're an SDR out there and you're watching this, you can't walk up to your boss and say, like, I have a 95% open rate, so I want a promotion. So a good way to tell the difference between lagging and leaning is just to ask yourself one question. Do you believe that this buyer would get hired or fired if this number was high or if this number was low? If the answer is no, then it's very likely a leaning indicator. So let's do a second buyer persona. So let's say sales reps, for instance. Their lagging indicator is closed won against their quota, right? So a good leading indicator would be stage 1 to stage 2 conversion, right? So it's a non-final indicator, or even conversion percentage into closed won. I can't walk up to my boss as a CRO and say my conversion rate is 20%. So I want or it's 30%. So I want a promotion. However, that will help you diagnose during the process, am I doing effectively enough to where I believe that I'm going to hit my lagging indicator of close won? So let's do one more. Let's do marketers, for instance. The final lagging indicator for marketers is MQL. So let's say that their goal was, 2,000 MQLs for the quarter. And they're only at 500 MQLs. And they only have a couple weeks left. So they look to a leaning indicator. So I want to see if anyone can guess. It's a non-final leaning indicator, performance-related indicator that helps the marketer know, are they on the right or wrong path? Do they have a good or bad ad? Is it getting a lot of attention? Did they put it in the right channel? So let's see if anyone can guess for a marketer what a leaning indicator is for them. So it's non-final, and it's just one that helps them diagnose, are they on the right or wrong path to hit their lagging indicator? Everyone's like, enough with the quizzes, Becc. So I'll give everyone a couple of seconds in the chat. But these indicators, there's going to be anywhere from 5 upwards of 7 of them. But these are going to be performance-related indicators that are non-final. So for a marketer, for instance, so the final one is MQL. A leading indicator would be click-through rate. Or, yeah, so Ibrahim's on the right path, impression rate, or amount of time that they stayed on the website. So if I have a really high impression rate, but my click-through rate is low, then it helps me diagnose, I think it's the body of the ad. If I have a high impression rate and a high click-through rate, but their stay rate on the website is very low, it's only 7 seconds, then I have to believe that it's a text on the website. If I have high click-through rate, high impression rate, and high stay rate, but I still don't have a high conversion into MQL, I'm going to assume that it's something to do with how the process to download something. So a leading indicator is a non-final performance-related indicator that people look to see, are they going to hit their lagging indicator? And if not, to diagnose the leading indicator to change and see if they've done that effectively. That's lap 2. So lap 2, in summary, is a leading indicator. And that is a performance-related indicator that helps someone know, are they on the right or wrong path when it comes to their lagging indicator to actually achieve the lagging indicator goal that they're after. So let's do a third one, and then we're going to go into why all of this matters on lap 4. So let's kick into lap 3 and go to leading indicators. So lagging indicators are measured after the game. Leading indicators are measured during the game. And leading indicators are measured before the game starts. So people evaluate these to understand, what are the leading indicators that I need to put into the machine to take my best guess on how to achieve the most lagging indicator success possible. So a good example for SDRs, let's say that the lagging indicator is booked meetings, and the leading indicators are open rate or reply rate or call connect rate. The leading indicators, you're going to have upwards of 7 to 15 of these. A good example for SDR would be the quality of the email, or the length of the email, or what time of day they're sending it, or the quantity that they are shelling out from day to day, or what kind of persona are they reaching out to, or what kind of company are they reaching out to. Is it a company that's over 500 employees? Is it someone who's 20 to 100 employees? But these are the inputs that someone changes to look to see that they're doing okay in terms of their lagging indicator, and then to finally hit, or their leading indicator, and then to finally hit their lagging indicator. So if we went sports related, for track and field, a good example would be, let's say, the shoes that they're wearing. A leading indicator could be at the baton handoff, like we have between lap to lap. How many seconds does it take for them to hand off the baton to the second person? So it's a leading indicator. No one's going to get a gold medal necessarily. That's not what they're finally medaled to drive. But it is a good litmus test on, we need to change something when it comes to this process, the equipment that these athletes are using. And the lagging indicator is, how long did it take in that 4x400 relay for them to finish as a team? For football, let's say, the lineup, the players that you're putting into the game is a leading indicator. A leading indicator would be ball percentage, possession time. How often and how much were you possessing the ball during the game? And then the lagging indicator would be, did I score enough more points than the other team to win the game? So the reason I'm bringing all of these up is because this is how your buyer anchors a problem. So the only thing that you do as a company, no matter what company you are, is you change leading indicators for people. So if I were to say, I'm going to try and lose 20 pounds, let's say, there's a couple of leading indicators that I can change in that process. Let's see if anyone can guess some of the leading indicators that I would change. So I'm trying to lose 20 pounds. What are 2 of the things that I could change, let's say, to try and drop that weight, or evaluate dropping that weight? So there's usually two that come to mind. Let's see if anyone can guess in the chat. I'm going to give you a little bit of a time gap here because I know I think there's a little bit of a lag. But one of the ones that I would first think about is working out. How much am I working out? So this is an input that I can change. So how much am I working out? What am I doing to work out? And then Justin nailed the other one. Diet is the second one. How much am I eating? What am I eating? So if I want to change this final lagging indicator of how much I weigh, then the things that I'm going to change are going to be the leading indicators. So I'm going to change how much I eat from whatever, let's say 1,800 calories to 1,400 calories. Or I'm going to change the amount that I'm working out from 5 times a week to 8 times a week, or whatever it is. But these are the inputs that you change to essentially affect your leaning and lagging indicator goals. So there's a number of these that you can change, and we're going to go into what these anchor to tomorrow in depth. But when you think leading indicator, think root cause. So the only difference there is which one of these leading indicators do I need to change, and by how much to improve my leading indicator and achieve my lagging indicator. When you think leaning indicator, think tactical problem. So I want to change the size of my emails from 10 paragraphs to 5 paragraphs, for instance. So I can change my reply rate from an industry average is 0.5 to 0.7. Let's say I'm at a 2% reply rate. I want to change that reply rate from 2 to 5%. So that I can change my lagging indicator of I'm only booking 3 meetings per month and my quota is 10. So I'm hoping that if I change the length of my paragraphs in my email, it will change my reply rate from 2 to 5. And then that will change my lagging indicator from 3 to 10 booked meetings per month. Or for a marketer, let's say, I'm going to change the channel that I'm putting them on, my ads on, so I can change the impression rate, from whatever, 20,000 impressions to 50,000 impressions. So I can change my MQL rate from I've only booked 500, I need to book 2,000. So why I'm being so technical here is not only is this how your buyer is defining a problem, but it makes it much easier for you as the seller to know what their problems typically are. So a lot of people struggle with, how do I find the problem that they want to solve? So the things that you help companies change is their leading indicator. So I'm going to change my football lineup from a 4-4-2 to a 4-3-3. And this is evaluated before the game. So I can change my possession rate from 35% to 60%. So I can score 3 goals on average versus 1. So I can win the game against England, for instance. Shout out France. Love France. So those are what leading indicators are. And this is essentially what you change to help a buyer achieve their lagging indicator goal. There you go. So that's lap 3. So without further ado, we're going to go into lap 4 now. Why do all those indicators matter? So why those indicators matter is if you're talking to a buyer and you are not mentioning these indicators, or you don't even know what those indicators are for a buyer, that's where you have to start. So a lot of people talk about, I need to build rapport, I need to build rapport, I need to build rapport. And how they view that is, I need to talk well about someone. I need to compliment them. I need to, see what their personal life is like, for instance. What are they, how are their kids doing, et cetera? What are they doing this weekend? But rapport actually comes from a French term. And what it means is to be brought back. And if I had to guess what that means, it's that your buyer is trying to solve problems and you need to bring yourself back to their side. You're trying to sell them something, but instead bring yourself away from your side to their side of they're trying to solve problems and you're trying to solve problems too. So a great way to do this, which we're going to get into in some later sessions, is to find things that they don't know. So there's two categories of this: a misdiagnosis, which is something they believe that's not true, and then a misdiagnosis, something they believe or something that they missed entirely when they were sizing themselves up. And your credibility and the rapport that you build with a buyer is based on how big of those items do you find that they didn't know about beforehand. So it's no big secret, 87% of buyers today don't want a seller involved. Whether that comes to they're buying an enterprise software solution or a stick of gum. And if I had to guess why, it's because the buyer or the seller never finds anything in their experience that they didn't already know. So your buyer is researching nowadays upwards of 20 different elements. So Forrester put out a report, and they're evaluating industry influencers, what they're saying about products, peer to peer. They call their friends and ask, like, have you used this tool? What do you think about it? And they're looking at reviews. If you go 20 items deep, the last thing they consider when purchasing a product is talking to a seller. So they're doing more research than ever before. I know that this is a topic that's been talked about on LinkedIn, but I think the topic that hasn't been discussed is your buyer has done an inherent amount of research. The question I have for sellers today is, have you done as much research as they have? They've researched because they know in their head that they're likely going to be banking on their own expertise in solving their problem, because sellers typically, in their experience, don't possess any expertise when it comes to their role that's actually going to help them. So a tactical problem or root cause are two hotbeds for things that I'm looking for that will help the person understand that there's a tactical problem and there's a root cause that they didn't know about that's affecting their lagging indicator goal. So I'd imagine why most salespeople, watch sales content is because either they're behind quota by a little bit, or they're marginally just above quota and they want to make sure that they exacerbate that. But the first case is going to be the more heavy. So my push to people is whenever anyone's trying to learn something, they're trying to learn things because they know that they're behind this lagging indicator goal. I'm an IT director and I am behind my server uptime goal. Server uptime SLA is 99 and 3/9, and I'm at 94, let's say. But I don't know why. So a great example of this is email deliverability. Most people know that they want to increase their open rate, increase their reply rate, because they're 76% of SDRs aren't hitting quota and 85% of AEs aren't hitting 75% of their quota. So they're hungry to find out why. But one thing that they don't know about, because it's not their job to know, is email deliverability. So only 59% of emails are actually winding up in the primary inbox. So we can talk about quality, quality, quality all day long. But the bigger problem, or the problem to start with, is to solve the email deliverability issue. So anything less than a 50% open rate, and there's an email deliverability issue. Now, industry average is 15 to 25% open rate. So when I'm rushing in discovery or cold email or cold call, one of the things that I'm asking is, what's your open rate? I don't ask them dead on, do you have an email deliverability problem? If they knew, they would have already changed it, and I add no value. But I'm asking them about one of these indicators to diagnose whether they do have an email deliverability problem. So they'll say 20%. And I'm like, they have an email deliverability issue. So some of the things you can change for that is custom tracking link, DKIM, DMARC, SPF, less links the better, no more than 50 emails per day. Don't send them at the same time. Don't send them in equidistant times, like 105, 110, 115. I have a list of different words that will prevent you from winding the inbox: problem, solution, free is a killer, increase, free trial, 100% discount, $100 off. But the point is that's an issue that's typically not known by the prospecting community. Or another one for sellers is they're rushing in and they do discovery and they're like, what's the impact to you if you don't blank? You're dead. If the buyer already knew what the impact was to them and they were correct, then you yield no value to them. and they know it. So they just want to rush up the conversation and find out what pricing is. So my push to everyone on the line today is, if you don't know the indicators for your buyer, just start there by researching them. How you can tell the difference between lagging and leaning is just ask yourself the question, would they get hired or fired to drive this? If the answer is no, then it's leaning. And how you can tell the difference between leaning and leading is ask yourself, can I buy this or change this directly? If I can change it directly, it's leading. But I can't buy a higher open rate. I can't buy a higher reply rate. So if you don't know those, start there, research those in industry averages so you can add to the conversation with your buyer. That is everything. Thank you so much for coming. I know that it's a Saturday and that everyone is probably, I don't know, when I imagine the US at this point, I imagine people mowing their lawns with like the little lawnmower. Maybe it's just because I don't know how to mow a lawn, even if I ever had one. But thank you so much for spending your Saturday with me. We covered a lot today. We covered lagging, we covered leaning, we covered leading, and the differences in some examples. And tomorrow we are going to be following up with, how do people anchor problems to those? What's a business problem? What's a tactical problem? What's a root cause? And what are some tips on how to find those and what you solve for a buyer for ultimate results? But I can't thank you enough for showing up today. So opening ceremonies was last night for the Sales Olympics, which is très important, very important. And also the quote unquote real Olympics. So tonight, I went to the opening ceremonies yesterday. Oddly enough, I got situated for some reason right across from the Eiffel Tower, even though we were doused in rain. And tonight, I'm going to see, in about 2 hours, I'm going to the swimming heat. So I'm going to see a number of different relays in the finals, et cetera, et cetera. But I hope you're tuning into the Olympics. I hope that you are having a great weekend. And please join us tomorrow at 3 p.m. CEST. And we are going to be going even deeper on some of these topics. We're going to go into the only two things that you can find on a cold call, cold email, discovery call that can actually add value to your buyer and actually make them want to keep you around because they found so much value from you. So as always, I'm going to be cheesy and French and say à bientôt, à demain, et merci pour tout. Au revoir, everybody.